have eight LinkedIn Live um, series. It's an educational series on the how to build your franchise model for the particular business or services that you're offering. And we're lucky that we have John Hayes along with my um, co-host from Franchise Chat, Joe Caruso. John is one of the, now correct me if I'm wrong, John, but aren't you the only professor of franchising in the United States, which the university offers this both as an elective and offers it at the MBA program. Is that right? Or help me out on that.
There are other faculty across the world who are teaching franchise classes. My title has franchising in it. Generally, these faculty will be adjuncts or they will be full-time faculty who are business school faculty primarily. And yes, at Titus Center for Franchising at Palm Beach Atlantic University, I teach live in the classroom. It's not online teaching, although occasionally we offer an online course. And students at the undergraduate level can earn a concentration in franchising along with their major, which is usually a business major, but doesn't have to be. And MBA students can specialize in franchising, and several have done so. This is our 7th year of development at Titus Center.
And just to follow that up, I think you recently the MBA was got in the MBA program was accredited.
Yes, not just the MBA, the Rinker School of Business at Palm Beach Atlantic University has achieved AACSB accreditation, and only about 5% of business schools worldwide have that designation. So it was a 5-year process, very rigorous, difficult for a small private university. We have under 4,000 students at PBA. So difficult to achieve, but glad that we did, because without it, you're not competitive, particularly with your MBA program.
And just correct me, how many of the other faculty, let's say in the United States, who are offering franchising courses have a PhD?
Ben L'Italian.
Okay.
Ben L'Italian's not with a specific university, but he has a PhD and teaches at the college level. And I think there are a couple of others who have earned PhDs and are teaching, but none comes to mind. There are about 6 centers now that are dedicated to teaching franchising at the university level. We've never had this ever. And this is only developed in the last half dozen years.
It's terrific because, we have, in contrast in economic departments, you have people teaching the theory of the firm, that's a mainstay. Mm-hmm. And there's just absolutely nothing comparable to, theory of the franchise firm.
Right. Well, there are business deans on the record through media saying that franchising isn't real business. It's a copycat type of business, and it's not something to be taught in a business school. But that certainly has changed in the last 15 or so years, where numerous universities offer at least introduction to franchising as an elective course. And there are many more academics who are not teaching franchising because their university doesn't offer that course, but they're researchers in franchising. So there is a group of academics that belong to an association where the interest is doing franchise research. They'd like to teach, but they don't have opportunities to do so.
Well, that's the point of this particular seminar series, is to take a look at the foundations of these business models. Now, we're not going to take a look at it at a real academic view. We're going to look at it from individuals. The idea here is to take a look at a real franchisor who explains their business concept and then focuses on one or two problems that they've had. And I think this is going to make a lot of be helpful for a lot of people. In this particular seminar, we're going to be focusing on the segment professional training and coaches, um, and talk with or review Tom Pavin's concept. But just by as an introduction here, when you do a quick search on either business coaches or professional training on LinkedIn, there's more than almost 8 million members on LinkedIn who've indicated on their profile that they're either a professional trainer or they're a business coach. Many of those people will be independent, and some of those people will be thinking about, um, can I franchise my business offering, my business services? And if there's just one, I'm going to ask both you and John, you and Joe, if you were looking at a business service, in this case, the coaching type of service or training service, what would you say was the biggest advantage to someone thinking about franchising their business service? John?
Other people's time and money.
Yeah.
So, I talk to so many of these folks they've got a little business. Maybe they have one or two units that they own. A lot of people are asking them, is this a franchise? I'd like to have one, which usually leads nowhere because they don't have money or they don't understand what franchising is about. But oftentimes, the attraction for these owners is, if I could use somebody else's money and somebody else's time to open across the state or in another state, eventually in another country, that's the way to go, because I don't have a big bankroll to do this.
Right. Joe, what would you give a one-liner on that? Thinking about services.
Well, first thing I'd ask the person is, well, can it scale? Is this thing scalable? Can you teach someone else how to do this as well or better than you're doing it right now? And can it be replicated? Can it be duplicated?
Yeah, I think I would say the biggest advantage for somebody who's in the business services or coaching or training is that this provides them with a higher exit value than they would have if they were just trying to sell their consultancy. Their consultancy is highly dependent upon them, will not scale. There's no guarantees that the business is any good after them, or as good. And the whole point of systematizing your business is so that other people can take it over without you, and you'll get a higher multiple on your exit.
I think that's a very good explanation. I'll add to it in this way. You often hear the phrase about working on your business versus working in your business. This is the ultimate working on your business and not in your business, based on the description that you just gave.
Yeah. All right. Now let's turn to the actual person, Tom Pavin, and this is from a clip, John. This is 3 years ago. Is that right?
Yes, he was the first guest to sit in the hot seat on our pandemic version of the franchise hot seat, which was all by Zoom. Tom was our first guest.
Okay. So this video clip's about 4 minutes. I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to play it, and we'll let the audience listen to the entire amount, and then we'll stop it and come back and pick your brains about what the business concept is, according to Tom. So let's get him up there.
College planning really found me. It was within that I found my calling. and that was to serve and to make a difference in a young person's life. Now, 23 years later, right, we have over 100 college planners. We have 47 locations. We're in 23 different states. And with all those, we've helped 6,500 students go to colleges around the world, 550 different ones, and that have received $482 million in merit-based scholarships alone. So for us, college planning is kind of like hiring your tax guy, right? You hire them because you want to make sure it's done right. You're nervous about getting savings and am I doing it right and can I do it proactively? And so that's what we do. Our mission really is to empower students, and we serve families, and then we inspire that greatness in those young people. So if you're a couple with a high schooler or two going through the process, and you're thinking about what it was, right, 20, 25, 30 years ago, it's so much different now, right? Because kids apply to 5 to 10 colleges, and there's 10, 20 different deadlines, and there's essays and college visits, and people are so busy. So what we realized is that this was a multi-year complex process. So knowing that early engagement is the game changer, we started working with students earlier as 9th graders and 10th graders, 11th graders, right? Earlier in the process, because what used to be the senior year is now the junior year. And so we really did one thing, and that was we made college planning simple. Simple, right? And so we can take it over and have a comprehensive roadmap. And so we connect the dots for the parents, right? We help them with the GPAs, and we help them with the ACT and the SAT courses and the stuff that we're able to deliver with our own materials. And so we're able to help them with their resumes and planning for college and the essays and essay workshops and applying early so a student can enjoy their senior year. And so you do all that, right? You visit 10 colleges, we help them to apply to 7, right? And we help them to love 5. And you do all of that in a couple-year process, right? While they're doing all of their social life and their sports and their activities, and mom and dads are busy. So we help out with that communication also. Our market share is huge, right? There's 26,500 high schools across the country. With our 47 locations, we cover 400 of those. So that's why we know that 500 locations is an easy number for us to be able to hit as our first goal. What we seek from the franchise hot seat, what we're excited about, is really 3 things. Number 1 is we're excited for mentorship. We're in 23 states, but we want to be in 50. And so we really, just like we talked about earlier with High Point University, I have mentors there. Believing in mentors is a big part of, has always been a big part of my mantra. Number 2 is capitalization, right? Some extra capital always helps. We've sold 10, 12 franchises the last 4 years, but we want to take that to another level and be able to sell 25 or 30 or 40 in a single year. So we're selling a small portion of our company, a 10% stake, for $150,000 for investment in our company. And the third thing is we've never had a national franchise launch program as far as to award franchises. I didn't find college.
All right. So when you listen to Tom, Joe, what's the first thing that comes across in your mind when you see that?
Well, when I see that, it seems he has a lot of opportunity, and he's been doing this for a while. He knows what he's talking about.
Okay, so
It seems very credible.
now he's got 20 years. So the first thing that, if you're thinking about doing this, you might say to yourself, well, how many years do I have that compared to the 23 that Tom has? Maybe if I only have 3 or 4 years, I should not be considering franchising at this point. What do you see, John?
A guy who wants to serve.
Yeah.
At his heart. I love Tom Babin, and I did not know him really. Well, I wouldn't say we're friends today. We're associates, and I know him better today than I did at the time of the franchise hot seat. But this is a man who was a youth minister and discovered a need for helping young people find the right college. And thus he created Class 101. But you can see that Tom is meek and mild. He's not a business guy per se to drive a franchise to a national launch. You know, he never, at that time, he said, we never had that. 23 years in, now 26 years later, he needed guidance and help, and still does, to be a franchisor at a national or an international level. But we need more Tom Pabins in franchising, because at his heart is the word serve. He wants to serve franchisees, and he wants to serve the consumer, the end user of his service. And we don't see enough of this. The one who really is willing to put money aside, slow down the building of the business for the sake of making sure that he's doing the right thing to serve everybody who's involved, the stakeholders.
Yeah, I would put it, I agree with that, but I would put it maybe slightly differently. Here's a guy who has a lot of zeal, right? A lot of, saw a problem and said, you know, I'm going to solve this problem. This is the sort of person I am. And I think that to turn that sort of, to find a business solution to that, or a business, that's pretty good. I mean, there's a lot of things one might be passionate about or have zeal on, and you know, not be able to make, not find a business there. But I mean, he's got a matching business, right? He's matching students with schools.
Yeah.
And you can tell, and I think this is something that if you're, you know, if you were thinking about franchising, you'd have to ask yourself, am I as, and I don't like this word in general, but in this word time, I think it's appropriate, but am I as passionate as Tom is for helping these people that I'm serving? Right? Because I think if you're lacking that, if you're in this particular business, you will find it very hard to continue.
Yeah. Well, you know, I love Tom Pabin. Second time I've said it, but I wish he had more fire under him to develop Class 101 faster.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
I appreciate his heart for service and his heart for people. And I know firsthand his Class 101 works. He did not know about Palm Beach Atlantic University until he came to a Titus Center, a selling franchises summit that we did 4 years ago, I believe, before he did the hot seat. And he asked if he could use our campus for his first national meeting of his franchisees, at which time, you know, he only had something like, 40 locations. And they did come to campus. And the big benefit for Palm Beach Atlantic was that the Class 101 people did not know about little PBA in West Palm Beach, Florida. Today, there are 2 students sitting in my classes who were recruited for us by Class 101. It's amazing, you know, how that has happened. And I'm sure we have more coming. So he provides a great service to families that going to college is expensive and very confusing today. And where's the best fit and where can you get money?
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about the business.
Yeah.
Joe, why do you see this as a business as opposed to, you know, just, well, here's some ideas for you. There's all sorts of other, I'll say, college prep services out there. You know, anybody teaching the LSAT to, I can help you get, you know, grants. There's all of those, I'll say, consultancies. when you look at this and you want to, you know, give a one-line explanation, why is this matching services? Why is this a business? Why can't you do this on your own? And that's probably the better way of saying it.
Well, it seems quite different than tutoring or preparation for the LSATs. This much is a much longer commitment in terms of the relationship between the student, the family, and Class 101, the local provider. So there's got to be more to it. And sure, I mean, you can go find a tutor to give you a plan to succeed in passing your LSAT. But in terms of mapping your future and colleges and when to begin that process, this based on what we saw on Franchise Hot Seat seems very, very different. There's much more to it, more moving parts.
Yeah, I mean, it just beats this sort of what he's offering here as a service is something that beats the natural inclination for procrastination.
Yeah, you must be. I mean, if you're coaching a family and a student, these are the things you must do at these intervals, and keeping them on track seems to be essential. Otherwise, they won't succeed. And unless I'm getting that all wrong, John. I mean, you prep
No,
for this.
I agree with you. No, I agree with what you're saying. The business isn't necessarily an easy one, even though it looks so simple. You're inviting students to meet with you over a period of time, and you're going to help them find a college. Not complex. You're not in a manufacturing plant making something that you have to worry about spoiling. This is a relationship business. Tom is a relationship leader, and that's important in franchising. But I think doing this on your own. How are you going to get in touch with X number? I don't know how many colleges and universities they serve, but how would you get more than 5 or 6 on your own? How would you get 500 to know which university is a good match? And how do you get that knowledge? This reminds me a little bit of ERA that Charlie Smith runs in the United States, where you have a network of franchisees. And some of those franchisees in ERA, for example, know everything about healthcare. And you don't have to know anything about healthcare. But if you've got a potential client who needs healthcare, you can go to your associate, another franchisee, and say, hey, can you join me in this project and help this client save on healthcare? Similarly here, you may not know 500 colleges and universities, but the network might know 5,000 colleges and universities over a period of time. And you could find out, well, who's the expert on, I'll say, Palm Beach Atlantic University? And maybe you don't know anything, but one of your colleagues does. So if a business like this is to be scalable, it needs the network.
You make a really good point, and it's something that I think gets people don't pay enough attention to it. Even the FDDs require you to say something that is a lie, that when you buy this franchise, you're an independent small business owner as opposed to an interdependent business owner. And that interdependency of the network is critical to the success of your success, of the network's success. And if you're the type of person that always wants to go it alone, it wouldn't make sense for you to be either a franchise operator or a franchisor. You've got to see that you want to have to build those interdependencies. And that's something that I think we need to, I think that's a very good example that you raised, John. And let me just follow up on that in terms of, from the student's point of view, why do they want a class 101? Well, that class 101, even let's suppose I'm a student and I say, look, I know which universities I'm going to. I'm pretty clear on this. And, my class 101 coach says, yeah, those are good universities for you. And, but why do you still want a class 101 coach? Because class 101, when it phones up who's ever arranging the visits at the university, because they're bringing consistently year after year more people to that university, they're going to get a better look than if you show up
Yeah.
in your Volkswagen van, if they still
Yeah.
have those things.
Right.
Right? So I think that you'll see a different side of the university and the different side of the university's offerings because of you using a coaching service.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Definitely. And when the coaches get to know faculty at that university, you get an extra level of care. When Class 101 tells me one of our students is considering Palm Beach Atlantic and wants to study business and possibly franchising, I'm all over that. I'm inviting
Right.
that family to come to West Palm Beach. Yeah, you can get a tour, a great tour through the university's admissions department, but you'll get even better tour from me because I'm going to spend time talking to you and the family and the student, the potential student, about what we do and how we do it. So I think it's a terrific business. It's a matter of how do you make this a household word? How do you sell more? And Tom said right from the beginning, I'm looking for capitalization to help me launch a national effort to sell franchises. Interestingly, post the franchise hot seat, that happened for his business. They were acquired by Unleashed Brands in the last couple of years.
Well, let's just talk about that business model. There were a couple of different. I heard him say. Did you guys hear him say that this is like hiring an expert tax preparer or accountant?
Yeah.
Now, there was that. There's also, if I'm thinking of relational businesses, there'd be, financial planners, life insurance. Now, there's life insurance that is franchised. Are there financial planners that are franchised?
I think so.
Like,
within accounting firms, accounting franchises, yeah, there are financial planners that
I'm not
related with a franchise.
If somebody's listening to this and is a financial planner, they can put it
Yeah,
in the comments
and let us know. Right.
Yes, you dummy. These are the
Right.
ones. So, but the one on tax, there's a lot of tax filer or preparer franchise systems.
Yeah.
Not so much as there was before the Robs, but the problem with that particular metaphor, and it's something we're going to come back to, is that is a very seasonal business.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if the part of the problems in terms of expanding this is that this too is a seasonal business.
I don't think it's as seasonal as tax preparation because they have ongoing. Students need to study for their SATs, for example. Well, that's a multiple month process. It can be more than a year process, depending on you go through some trials. You see where you need extra help. You're going to need some tutoring assistance, perhaps, and then visiting and selecting universities is a long process, particularly to line you up with, well, you're an athlete, and where could you get some money to play soccer, or where can you get academic money? So yeah, it's not a weekly effort. So you've got to have a volume of students that you're serving.
Yeah. And Joe, if somebody came to you and said, after 23 plus years, we're doing uh, 10, 10 franchises a year, where would you place that in terms of low, medium, or great in terms of development?
This would be in the low to medium, but closer to the low. There's no brick and mortar associated with it. It's a very low investment. It likely is being done part-time by a lot of the franchisees. So it's a fairly low risk proposition. So 10 seems low.
And it wasn't 10 in a year, Mike. It was 10 over
Yeah,
multiple years.
yeah, you're right.
So it's even lower than
Yeah.
what Joe is saying. But again, I don't want to smack him around
Yeah.
or be a downer. Tom Paben serves people, and he's not going to sell a franchise to someone who he thinks might not be right for us, or might not be right for them. So it's a slow selling process. Whereas, normally we hear we sold 10 this month. We sold
No,
we sold
not
100.
normally.
Now we got to get them open.
Yeah.
And they don't get them open.
Yeah,
Those people who
open.
say, hey, we sold 100. Good for you.
Yeah.
Let's check back in a year and see how many of those 100 actually opened. And that percentage will be very low. Tom didn't want to do that. Hasn't done that. But at the same time, if you're going to be in franchising and you're going to scale the business and bring value to your franchisees and to the ultimate end user, you got to light a fire under your franchise development team, which I don't believe Tom has had until he was able to get with Unleashed Brands.
Well, from the franchise hot seat, John, it's came across to me from Tom that if you became a franchisee in his system up to the point of the franchise hot seat show or event, he took great care in onboarding his franchisees and selecting his franchisees. Well, you just made a point about lighting a fire under your franchise development team, and that took Unleashed Brands to make that happen. Would it also stand to reason that that also needed to happen in the selection process for the franchisees, so that you were ensuring people that this was going to be a full-time gig, that this is going to be something that I am going to aggressively trying to grow in my territory that I have. I'm certainly going to take care of students and families. That is the priority. But as a franchisor, you want that franchisee to take care of more of them.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good, let me just segue into that, because that was one of the observations of one of the panel, and we're going to go to that right now. This is a clip about a minute long, but it segues quite nicely, Joe, with your observation about the selection process.
Tom, when I look at your item 19, it appears that some of your franchise owners are treating this as a part-time gig.
Right.
And I heard you say earlier that it is a regular monthly cadence to meeting with these students. What can you do? What can you think about doing to help your owners, your franchise owners, ramp up more quickly?
We started a 90-day program. We didn't have that in the past, but now we do. It's a 90-day launch program. And so that's really helps be able to support. So they come in for 1 week of training, and then over 90 days. And then also our franchise advisory board has started a mentorship program. So we have multiple ways of being able to help support a newer franchise. And then also the expectations. Here's what they are. And making sure somebody does start full time from the beginning because of their momentum. So
there's the problem. I mean, you highlighted it, John spoke around it. And it's a problem for, I think, not just this type of franchising, but a lot of franchising.
Yeah.
Now let's jump up on a slightly different level on this, because it used to be that nobody would ever approach owning a business as a part-time proposition, and we don't even have a good term for what that proposition would be. But John, you're hearing more about, because you're about people inquiring about, is it part-time the right word, or what's the
Gig.
Passive income. They're looking for passive income.
buy a bond?
Well, there's also the gig economy where you're
Yes.
driving for Uber, you're driving for Lyft,
Right.
and
Those
you're 20 hours a week as
those
an
aren't
accountant.
those aren't
Yeah.
terrific, fellas.
Yeah. Well, before the pandemic, and I remember through my personal experience when I was the CEO at We Buy Ugly Houses, we would often be approached by a parent, usually a father, who had a lot of money and had a son, usually, who he thought should be in real estate. And, he's going to spend the money, put his son into a Homevestors franchise. And we didn't allow that, because oftentimes if you could get the son aside by himself and say, you really want to be in real estate investing? He'd say, no, but my father thinks I should be. So that's not going to work.
Recipe for success.
But interestingly, when Fred DeLuca, the late Fred DeLuca, bought Homevestors after the Great Crash, or during the Great Crash, his first move was to create a franchise, a dumbed down franchise that you could put on your credit card. And instead of spending $50,000 to become a franchisee of Homevestors, you could spend, I think it was $8,000 or $10,000 to become a franchisee, with the idea that you could do this part-time. You could be a teacher 9 months out of the year, and then during the summer, you could do real estate investing. Well, yes and no. There's pros and cons to that as well. Allowed to sell. When I left the company, we were at 265 franchises, full-time franchises that paid that $50,000 fee, or maybe less because they got in early at $25,000. But now that company has somewhere in the range of 1,000 franchisees, which was something that, when DeLuca bought the company, he saw that potential. Wasn't necessarily the right or the best thing to do, but that occurs. There's now, because of the Uber and the Lyft experience and the gig economy, students who are constantly asking me, well, I want to be an accountant full time, but I want to own some franchises too, to continue my passive income. And I think we're now seeing some franchises that are lending themselves to that idea. I don't know that this is a good idea. The time is going to tell.
Yeah. I mean, let's just, for those on LinkedIn who might not know what the item 19 is, that's where the franchisor has to disclose, and has a wide latitude on how to disclose the earnings of the franchise operators. And who was on the panel there, John? Who asked her? Mary?
Yeah, she was with the Dwyer Group.
Right.
She was the president at the time of Molly Maid.
Yeah.
Mary, very good operator. Retired then from Dwyer Group. I don't know that she was ever part of Neighborly. But
and she says, okay, I've looked at what your franchise operators are making, and some are making up here and some are making down there. And those are your part-timers or seasonal or less than fully committed.
Yeah.
And Tom had an answer. I wasn't that impressed. I thought the answer was, yeah, we'll see. And I looked at the FDD 2 or 3 months ago. They still have that part-time problem.
Yes.
It's still in there. What did you think of that solution, Joe? And how do you relate that to franchise development?
I thought it was an interesting soundbite.
Yeah.
But in practicality, he talked about the 90-day launch and mentorship. Most mentorship programs within franchise companies between franchisees and other franchisees tend to not work. because there's no formality to it. There's no accountability to it. I'm just your buddy I can call. So that part of it, I'm suspect. On the 90-day launch and training, I would have been much more satisfied that they're really serious about it. Would be going if he talked about the ongoing support and how that we're checking in on their sales on whatever interval. Is it 7 days, 14 days, every 30 days, and looking at their pipelines and helping them manage what they're doing. I didn't hear that, and it doesn't sound to me like there's. I looked at the FDD too, and I don't see a mechanism in there. There may very well be one. They may have a way of managing this stuff, but it wasn't apparent to me. So I think the answer could have been much better.
He didn't expand on what does the 90-day program mean.
Yeah.
How does that help the part-time problem? And I think Tom needed to do a better job there.
Well, but
they haven't solved the problem.
These kinds of businesses, the first 90 days, it's not like opening up a Carl's Jr. or a Hardee's. You open one of those up, you're busy the first day. You cut that ribbon, you got a stream of people coming in. You cut the ribbon on a class 101, you're the only one there.
Yeah. No, I think that's, but to go back, and this is another element that I think that if you're thinking about, setting yourself up as a franchisor, figuring out your ongoing support procedures, why they're going to work, that's critical. Because if you don't have that, you're not going to be in the position of assisting your operators to make sure that they're profitable too. And you're making your money off their gross sales. If their gross sales aren't that high, you're going to be in some trouble. Now, this, of course, is this brings us to a different observation about this business model. The actual commission on this is a flat rate.
Yes.
What do you guys think about that? I'm not crazy about these flat rate commissions. I think they tell the world that you're not ever going to have enough money as a franchisor to create proper support programs, and you're largely not that interested in them succeeding really well. Because if they succeed really well, so what? You're still getting that flat commission.
You mean flat royalty?
Yeah, the flat royalty. Yeah.
Yeah, flat royalty.
$1,000 a month.
Let's confuse everybody.
Yeah, right.
Different term, all calling it a commission.
Shut up.
That $1,000 a month idea. Again, I think this goes to the heart of the servant leader. There was a fellow years ago in Philadelphia, one of my clients who had Mom's Bake at Home Pizza. And obviously, this was a consumer product, brick and mortar. You went in and picked up the pizza that you wanted, but you had to take it home to bake it. And $1,000 a month was your royalty. And I said to him one day, and he only had 20 units, and he was getting requests from all over the country. And I said to him, why don't you look into selling master rights someplace, or area development, or opening in New York State, which was not a good idea because of all the regulations there. This was a guy who was a servant leader who didn't want complication. And so he said, I have 20 units in the Philadelphia, New Jersey area. That gives me $20,000 a month. Anybody who can't survive and live and be happy off $20,000 a month should not be in franchising. Well, obviously, he had the wrong attitude about how franchising works and what more you could do for your franchisees. And I don't think Mom's Bake at Home Pizza, it's one of many, many, many hundreds at least of regional, local franchises that nobody in Florida would know that Mom's Bake at Home Pizza because of its just 20 units. That's all he wanted. Some people think that way in franchising. I think that thinking needs to be adjusted.
What are you thinking, Joe? You thinking of opening up?
Well, I can bake my pizza at home myself now, but what John made me think about is this: I love the servant leader attitude or um, idea. But I like capitalism too. You ought to have a little bit of capitalism in with it, because
Absolutely.
you can be a servant leader and make sure all the people you're leading make money, including you.
But if
Yeah.
you're not making money, you as a servant, you can't help them, right?
Well, there is that.
There is this ongoing support. I mean, that comes out of the royalties, and this is why I've never really liked the model of the flat. I mean, I could be convinced in some exceptions, but generally, it just sends the wrong signal to your operators that it's unlikely they're going to get the necessary support from you. And if your business is that simple that they don't need support from you, why are they paying royalties anyways?
Well, there's nothing noble about being a servant leader and taking less when you could make more. Because I think in franchising, you're going to recruit other people like you who are going to do less and expect less and be okay with it. I think it's a chasing mediocrity or worse.
Well, the Truett Cathy was another servant leader, but had a lot of capitalism in his approach, and I think that's a better route. Don Dwyer was a servant leader at heart, but selling franchises and developing franchisees and getting as much royalty as possible was at his heart as well. So we have great examples of that in franchising. We sometimes have the capitalist more so than we have any desire to be a servant leader. And in franchising, that does not work as well. It's not, you're not going to achieve praiseworthiness with strictly capitalism.
Yeah, when there is a servant leader thesis in place, that's great. But if you can add in tying the economic interests of the franchisor and the franchisees into that servant leadership and make it pay for everyone, that's a great idea.
Yeah. And I'm hoping that under Unleashed Brands, and probably what Unleashed Brands saw in Class 101 is exactly what we see. The opportunity to light a fire under franchise development and really make this a national brand. That has to be achieved. And it's not something Tom was going to do on his own.
Right. That's a very good place, I think, to stop this particular seminar, because I think it we've got a very good, got a good man, the good idea, but just lacking something, and we don't know even what that something was to push that over into the national brand. So those are all things that I think if you're thinking about, franchising your professional coaching service or your business training service, these are all good places for you to look inward and say, have I got that covered? So,
yeah,
Joe, sorry.
I think it's important, Mike, based on what you just said, that if you don't maximize these unit level sales, and it is a really good business, you're leaving a very wide opening. You're building a bridge over any moat that you may have for competitors to come in.
And they will come in on horses.
Right.
Because you built the bridge for them. All right. Joe, what's our next topic in this series? And when is it? Caught you off guard, didn't I? And now you're muted.
Why are you muted, Joe?
Joe, don't make me do this.
It's Frios.
I don't mean to be muted, and I needed to
Yeah.
go to the calendar, which brought me to a different screen.
All
But
right.
I'm going to find this.
Frios Pops is the
Yeah.
topic, Joe.
Building your franchisor model for food and beverage manufacturers. And Frios Pops is a manufacturer of their own product and their distribution. So it's going to be on that.
So if you're in the food and beverage industry and you think that you're making this wonderful product, when is it smart and when is it not smart to franchise your distribution? All right.
I should probably tell them what date it is.
You should.
That would help, Joe. We thought you were.
Yeah.
Well, the date is Wednesday, October 4th at
Great.
12 noon Eastern time.
Wonderful.
Very good. John, we'll see you then.
Yeah.
Joe, we'll see
Appreciate
you
it.
then. Thank you very much. Appreciate it all. Goodbye for today.